year, I thought it might be appropriate to share something with you that I shared with some other friends and with church family recently. And it's talking about going into the new year. You know, a lot of people go into the new year and it's really just I don't want to say it's just formality because they're serious when they go through it, but they really just change the calendar. And so no real changes happen beyond 22 days is what the experts say, that all the new Year's resolutions and all the resolve pretty much kind of washes away after about 21 or 22 days every year. And so as we were talking about this, I likened the children of Israel under Joshua when they were about to go in and possess Canaan to modern day Christians, meaning that we have been transferred or translated based on Colossians 1, I think 13 and 14. We've been transferred into this new kingdom. And that's like God giving a promise to Abraham hundreds of years before Joshua. So we've been given a promise. There is an inheritance that's ours. But being transferred into the kingdom, Colossians 1, being translated into the kingdom of God out of a kingdom of darkness, it's really just like leaving Egypt. And so we have been transferred out of darkness, out of death, into life. But what happens if you stand there at the edge of it and you never go in and you never claim it? So God had been faithful to be with Moses. And we saw in Exodus 13, Exodus 14, the children of Israel are cornered. They're at the Red Sea. There seems to be no way to go. And then God has Moses to do something. They go across safely, get to the other side, and they go on for 40 years. But because of their lack of faith, because of their inability to understand God, to really know his ways, they knew what he did, but they didn't really understand him. And then they had a lack of faith when they had to go into the promised land. He already told them it was theirs and told them what would be there, but they had to go double check it themselves. And then they come back and say, oh, I don't think we can do it. Moses can't go in, nor can those people go in. So now we have Joshua, who is right at the edge of where they're supposed to go to see God's promise fulfilled. But he looks around him and he's just like, wow, I have all these people with me and they're not qualified to go in. I mean, these are people who have heard about God. They have heard about him being faithful. They have maybe experienced the feedings, the water, the manna, the quail, whatever. They may have experienced some things, but there was never a time when it was up to them and their faith and their prayers and their patience and their relationship with God to produce anything. So they had been living on the relationship of Moses and their forefathers, foremothers as far as that goes, their forefathers. And so they find themselves now the ones who are in charge. It's kind of like Thanksgiving dinner. If you have someone always prepare it, but you never prepare the people who follow, then once that person leaves, you will not have Thanksgiving dinner like you did before. The food just won't be the same. Could be better, but it's going to be different. That's the one thing we know. And so Joshua hears from God, and God says, you know what? You need to circumcise the fighting men so that they can go with you and with me into the promised land and seize it. So that's the story. That's where we are. But for us as Christians going into a new year, going into 2024, I don't know that we can go into this one and improve if we rely upon our 2023 state of mind, our 2023 actions. Because if we were honest, some of us lived on the prayers of other people. Some of us lived on the hopes and patience of other people. Some of us didn't have to have resolve all the way because there was somebody helping us have resolve. We really hadn't been through anything or any seasons where we had to really honestly wait on God. So we have a relationship with God, but it may be that we're not in relationship with him. And so the truth of the matter is that you need a relationship with him, and you need to be in relationship with him, in relationship. So when you're in relationship, he's relating to you and you're relating to him. And that relationship takes you to the destiny that he has in store for you. But again, it's not a one-way thing. It's not you just asking God and letting him do it. No, there's going to be a communication back and forth. There are prayers, and then there will be supplications with thanksgiving. And so you go into the new area, the new promises of God, into the new year, as it were, with God. But the battles that were previously fought just because Moses and God had a relationship won't necessarily happen for you. So that means that you now have to go into a hostile land, some areas of your life, some areas of your destiny, where there's going to be opposition, where the people didn't vacate it and say, okay, God has anointed you to be X, and so now just come on over here and you can do it. No, there may be some opposition, which requires us to, in relationship with God, navigate our way into a position to where we can then assume what he has promised for us, assume the positions that he has promised for us. And so, like Israel, they didn't have any real stark reminders of what God had done to get them, their forefathers, through the 40 years in the wilderness to the promised land. So the edict is, these people need to be circumcised. And so that created a painful situation, that created bloodshed, that required the removing of the foreskin. And those were all things which could serve as a daily reminder that they were in covenant with God, that there was a relationship they were supposed to have with God. And so that reminder, the circumcision, the pain of it, the days they couldn't do anything and they had to just stay in the camp. I mean, all those things serve to remind them that they were not doing anything in and of themselves and with their own power, but that instead everything they would accomplish would be because God had ordained it, God had already spoken it, and then God's power was at work through them to accomplish what he needed. And so they needed to be circumcised in order to walk in God's will, to fulfill his purpose. And so I present that challenge to you as you go into the new year, or whenever you hear this message. Are you going forth where you have basically circumcised your heart, you consecrated yourself, you set yourself apart to accomplish God's work? And I'm not talking about just church, though church is involved. I'm not talking about religion, though there's an aspect of religion involved. I'm talking about you as a human being who has been ordained by God to be in this season in the earth for a specific reason, as opposed to Atlantic. I always joke with people about that, a specific reason. You have something you're supposed to accomplish, but God doesn't fight with people who are not ready to fight. Meaning, God is only going to carry you for so long until you wipe out some things that are in your life. You consecrate yourself, you set yourself apart. There are some places you just ought to not be on a regular basis with other people doing what they're doing. There are some things you ought to not be saying because it sounds more like the world than it does like Jesus. And so I would say that if there's something in your life, if there are habits, if there are desires, if there are relationships, I don't care if it's family, I don't care if it's friends, God has given us a dictate of how we love. And it doesn't mean that you have to hang out with everybody in order to show them love and to be loved. And so there are some things that you need to cut off. There are some people you need to cut off. And so there are some habits you need to cut off. And there's some habits that you need to begin. And there are some people you need to form relationships with. And there are some people you need to serve and you need to show love towards. There are some things you need to do because God is not just going to do it because you're quote unquote holy, but he expects you to walk in the earth, even as his son did, in the image of him. He expects you to walk in the image of Jesus. So if your stank attitude, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say that, your sorry attitude towards anyone doesn't glorify God, then you need to get yourself circumcised. You need to change that part about you and cut that part of your attitude off in your heart so that it is exposed and you spend some time in the word. That means spend some time in the camp. That means spend some time in Bible study, spend some time in church, listening to sermons, messages, so that you can be healed of that thing and it can be a lasting healing. So that as God then identifies you as someone who is ready to enter the new year, to accomplish new things, no matter how old you are, God is trying to show out through you. He's trying to make you seen, and collectively as a body, he's trying to make us be like a city that sat on a hill. He's expecting each one of us to be salt wherever we live and wherever we go, in business, in our relationships, financially. He's expecting us to bring his kingdom presence everywhere we go. But if we are trying to bring it and our hearts are not consecrated, we're not consecrated, we're trying to be both holy and be worldly, then I'm going to submit to you that he is only going to support that for so long. And then you're maybe at a point where you're on your own, so to speak. You may already be there. But I really charge you, as we go into this new year, make this one of your New Year's resolutions. This is more important than health and more important than wellness, more important than what you eat. Make sure that you are pulling things out of your life, cutting things out of your life that distract you from the will of God, and that you're drawing nearer and closer to things that will point you and encourage you and require you to pursue God. Today's session is a little bit different than the others. I'm not popping up a lot of scriptures on the screen, but I think it's important to set the right tone as we go into, I don't care about the new year. I'm really more concerned about as we go into the land that he has promised for us, into the inheritance that he has promised for us, which is the kingdom of heaven. And so we won't realize it unless we go into it like he wants us to go into it. Just like he required Joshua and his people in the natural, in the flesh, to be circumcised. Circumcise your own heart. Pastor Ken, this is what's good for us all. I'm doing the same thing as you are, based on the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. That's all that really stands. The word of God, and his word is just so powerful, will stand and will last forever. Let's pursue the truth in this new year, even when it means we have to make changes. May God bless you and keep you.